In our microbiology class, we've been throwing in forensics labs and solving crimes throughout the whole year. First, we helped solve a murder mystery by examining a man's stomach contents to determine what macromolecules were present in order to determine where he may have eaten his last meal. We also used fingerprints to determine who stole the answer to our final genetics test, and we used DNA fingerprinting to solve a mystery. And we investigated a terrible crime scene using luminol to help us determine if there was blood at the scene and if that blood pointed toward what may have happened and to who may have been our suspect. We learned how to identify a person's handwriting and used chromatography to determine what pen was used to write a ransom note. Now we've moved into our disease unit, and we will find out that our forensics investigations will continue throughout this unit. But it's going to look a little different. Our criminals are often too small to see without a microscope, and sometimes they're smaller than what a microscope can see. This makes it hard to find and stop our criminals. How can you stop a criminal you cannot see? There are detectives who specialize in this type of forensics mystery solving, and they are called epidemiologists. An epidemiologist is called a disease detective because their job is to identify a disease and solve the mystery of how and when the disease entered into a population, as well as how to stop the disease from continuing to harm the patient. And in epidemiology, which is the study of disease, the patient is seen as the whole community that is affected, not just one person. If a disease is localized to a large number of individuals in a community, or a population, or in a region, then it's an epidemic. It's very important to begin trying to solve the mystery of the disease and try to contain it so that it doesn't spread into other communities. If it does this, then the disease can turn into what we call a pandemic, where it is spread to multiple countries, or even to multiple continents, or in the case of COVID, to the entire world. If a disease becomes a constant presence in a community, it can become endemic. In many countries around the world, malaria is an endemic. An outbreak is when a disease experiences a large, unexpected increase in the number of cases in a community, or it can also be just a single case of a very contagious disease that pops up in a new area. Obviously, depending on how contagious a disease is, an outbreak can become an epidemic, if not quickly controlled. But to control a disease, epidemiologists must solve at least a piece of the mystery and stop the disease from spreading. How do they do this? To explain it in simple terms, let's use a triangle. This is a special triangle called an epidemiologic triad. That's a big fancy word for a triangle that can help a disease detective solve the mystery of a disease. On one corner of the triangle, we have the agent. The agent is the bad guy in our crime scene investigation. He's the one causing harm to the patient, which again is the entire population. In the case of COVID, the agent is the SARS-19 virus. In the case of malaria, the agent is a little parasitic protozoan called a plasmodium. The host is another part of the triangle. The host is the population that the agent is attacking, and the host suffers harm from the agent. In the case of COVID, the host is anyone who is infected by the virus, but those who are the most vulnerable are the elderly and the immunocompromised people. Immunocompromised means that their immune system is weakened for some reason. In the case of malaria, the host is anyone who is infected by the virus, but those who are the most vulnerable are children less than 5 years old. The environment is our third part of the triangle. The environment is what brings the host and the agent together. Diseases cannot happen if the environment is not just right for these two to meet and come into contact with each other. In the case of COVID, the environment is the air that we breathe, which can contain the virus. Close proximity to someone who may have the disease could be just what the virus needs to enter into a new host. Staying 6 feet away from other people can keep the host and agent from meeting up, thus stopping the spread of the virus by disrupting the environment. In the case of malaria, the environment is a place in which a specific type of mosquito lives. Malaria is a disease that needs a vector, and a vector is anything that helps transport the agent to the host. We'll put the vector here. So the vector is required for the host and the agent to come in contact with each other, but the environment must be right for that vector to be there. So malaria is a disease that needs a vector, and a vector is anything that helps transport the agent to the host. The parasite Plasmodium lives in the gut of a mosquito and cannot harm a human host unless it gets transported into the human through the bite of the specific mosquito. So the environment of malaria is dependent on where this mosquito can survive. At this time, malaria is in Africa. a lot of Asia, Central and South America, the Caribbean, the Middle East, and Oceania. That's a lot. Although some cases of malaria have been found in America, it is found in people who have returned from these areas. The mosquitoes we have in America do not have the ability to be a vector for Plasmodium, so it cannot spread to other people. So the job of a disease detective is to stop the spread of a disease in a population, hopefully before it turns into a pandemic, and also to try to keep it from turning into an endemic. So how do they do this? Well, they break one of the sides of this triangle. In the case of COVID, they can't stop the virus or the agent because they don't know enough about it. It's just so small and so sneaky, but they can stop it from reaching the host by breaking the side between the host and the environment, this side right here. By staying 6 feet apart and staying home when you're sick, wearing a clean mask when in community, washing your hands with soap and hot water, all of these things are ways in which epidemiologists are attempting to break this side of the triangle and stop the disease spread. With malaria, it's different. They can't break host to environment because that would take removing people or mosquitoes from half of the world. Instead, they try to control the spread of disease by breaking the side between the agent and the host by blocking the vector. They do this by giving people nets that cover their beds at night so they don't get bit when the mosquitoes are out and active. And of course, a vaccine can stop the agent from infecting people as well. These are just a few examples of how epidemiologists use this special triangle to solve the mystery of disease. But this is a devotional. So what can we learn about our walk with the Lord from this lesson? Well, the bad guys, spiritually speaking, are similar to the agent on our disease triangle. Just like many of the agents that cause disease, our spiritual agents are also invisible to us. Last week, we talked about how important our spiritual armor is in fighting this invisible agent. God has given us all we need to fight our enemy, but it's still up to us to decide whether we're going to pick it up, put it on, and use the armor and the weapon that he gives us. We're kind of like the host in that our agent, the devil, seeks to destroy us any way that he possibly can. The Bible tells us this in 1 Peter 5:8. It says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." This picture is huge. A lion watches its prey looking for weakness. It stalks it. And the devil watches us and looks for places where our armor doesn't quite fit right, and he attacks there. Or he watches to see where we are weak with the use of our weapon, or slow with our shield, or unprepared with our attack, or unprepared with our defense. 1 Peter 5:9 goes on to say how we should deal with this enemy. It says, "Resist him, standing firm in the faith. For you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of suffering." So first it tells us to resist him, and then to stand firm. There's that command to stand again. But it's not just standing firm that is important. It's what we're standing firm on. We're to stand firm in the faith. And what is the faith? The faith is in Jesus Christ, our strength, our shield, our breastplate, our helmet, and even our sword, the Word of God himself. So how can we stop the disease of sin from ravaging our souls and destroying us? By stopping the agent from a successful attack by resisting him and standing firm in the faith. When we do this, we can break the part of the triangle between the agent and the host. But what about the other sides of the triangle? Can we break those sides too? Well, sometimes we must make the decision whether we're going to walk into an environment where sin is welcomed and celebrated. These are places we go with the intention to sin. They can be actual physical places, like choosing to go to a party where alcohol or drugs will be offered, or maybe it's joining in with a group of friends who are making fun of someone, or planning to disrupt a class, or dishonor a teacher, or cheat on a test or on homework. It could be choosing to watch a movie that includes scenes where people are living out sinful acts on the screen. It could be books I choose to read or pictures I choose to look at. Websites or TikToks and the like can also lead us into an environment where the devil can gain a foothold and attack easily. We have a choice whether or not we're going to enter into those types of environments. We can break this side of the triangle by choosing not to go into those kind of environments. We can choose to avoid these types of environments by heeding the advice that we can find in 2 Timothy 2:22. Flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. This verse teaches us that we must make a conscious and drastic decision, literally, to flee from these desires. To flee indicates the understanding that this is a dangerous situation and I must act and move quickly. I must literally flee. And to pursue implies that I'm seeking with extreme desire to find something of great worth. That which I am to pursue will help me fight my enemy, the devil. It'll be an environment in which he cannot stand. I'm to pursue righteousness. The devil cannot stand in an environment of righteousness. I'm to pursue faith, and the devil cannot stand in an environment of faith. I'm to pursue love. Again, he can't stand in an environment of love. And I'm to pursue peace. And the devil cannot compete in an environment where peace is found. I'm also told to pursue those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. That means I need to pursue other people who are pursuing God. They will hold me up and strengthen me. They can help me fight. We can fight together, back to back. In ancient times, when they would fight on the battlefield, they used to fight back to back so that they would have confidence that they wouldn't be attacked from behind. That's where the saying, "I've got your back," came from. Who you choose to spend time with can and will affect your ability to fight against the devil's schemes. It's part of the environment that you choose to live in. There are friends who have your back and are armed with the proper equipment to fight against this ruthless enemy. There are other friends who may love you dearly but aren't equipped with the right armor or weapon. They have good intentions but aren't prepared for the battle. And though they attempt to help you, they fail and leave you more open to surprise attack, as you were under the impression that they had your back. Knowing how to use your armor and weapon correctly is vital to the success of your battle with the enemy. Last week, some of you asked me to have my son dress up in his full fencing uniform, and I thought it would be more exciting to see him actually duel another fencer. Since his dad has also learned to fence, we set up a fencing duel between the two of them. Fencing duels are practices for the real battle, and in a real battle, one may not have all the same protective gear. If you've ever seen the Princess Bride movie, you see two of the characters fencing without any armor to really speak of. But our God never sends us onto the battlefield without offering us all the armor we need. But sometimes we refuse to put the armor on. Before we see the fencing duel, I want to just introduce you to some of the terms that we'll be using. The swords that they're using are called rapiers, which is a French word that means sword. So we could just call them swords, but I will be referring to them with their proper name as a rapier. The shields are small but effective, and they're called bucklers. Their breastplate is the white jacket made with special material that keeps the blade of the rapier from cutting them. But it's also the neck guard, which is called the gorget, which in French means throat. I'm sure you can guess why it's really important to protect this in fencing. And in one of our battles, you'll see this. In our first battle, our fencers will not be using the bucklers. No shields. Notice as the battle begins, it's important for Josiah to be ready to stand firm. He also needs to be able to successfully predict where his opponent will strike and how. Josiah must respond in the appropriate way to keep the strike from hitting its mark. As Josiah's opponent hits his mark, Josiah takes a knee. This is to symbolize a wounded fighter still able to defend himself, but impaired by his injury, wherever the injury happened to be. In this case, Josiah has lost the use of his leg. Watching Josiah's dad begin his next attack on the injured Josiah, I find it interesting that he stomps loudly, attempting to throw fear into the mix, trying to disarm Josiah even more. Our enemy, the devil, does the exact same thing when he attacks us. When he gets us down, he throws in fear to try to keep us down. Josiah stands his ground even as he is kneeling. And when you think about it, kneeling is appropriate in our battle with the enemy. Prayer is important. And Josiah wins the battle with the enemy. Our fencers now pick up their bucklers, and you can see how much more protection it gives them. And Josiah's opponent strikes and hits his mark, wounding Josiah. Josiah's opponent antagonizes him by trying to distract him as he constantly hits his buckler. But Josiah sees through this taunting and strikes a blow to his opponent's arm, causing the blood to flow and slowly destroying his enemy.
Well, he didn't just dramatically kill me. He hit the artery and I blended it.
I'm sorry, you don't even realize that you're dead for a few seconds.
You win some, you lose some. In this battle, Josiah loses badly as his enemy strikes a mortal blow. Ouch. and the battle begins to heat up. Josiah comes back stronger this time, stronger and more capable of using his weapon. His successes and failures have trained him to fight. Although he fights against his opponent well, he becomes entangled with his enemy with his rapier caught on the buckler of his opponent, and his opponent's rapier is caught on Josiah's buckler. They become locked in mortal battle, and both fall together into the pit of death. It reminds me of how Satan's fate is already set by God, and yet he is not satisfied unless he can pull down as many people as he can to join him there. And Scripture teaches us that there is a sin that easily entangles us. Sometimes pride comes in as we begin to learn how to use our spiritual armor. We start to get our eyes off of Jesus and on how well we're doing. This is a dramatic picture of what can happen if we don't fix our eyes on Jesus, as Hebrews 12:2 tells us to do in order to break free from this entanglement. Notice Josiah's tiring. He's not holding his rapier as high as he should. He is showing signs of exhaustion, and his opponent studies this and attacks appropriately. He takes out his shield arm, removing its protection, and Josiah is now much more vulnerable to the enemy's attack.
No. That was my second best arm.
The enemy comes in strong and finishes him off. As this next bout begins, we see Josiah handles his rapier better and his attacks are stronger. He isn't just on the defense, but also on the offense. He strikes well. But the battle turns scary as his opponent strikes straight for Josiah's face.
Oh! That was scary.
Even with a mask for protection, it's still a scary thing to see a sword coming straight for your face. With fear in the picture, the battle continues and Josiah stands firm. Attacking strong, he takes out one of his opponent's legs. But this doesn't stop his opponent. He mocks him and mocks him. As he mocks, he distracts Josiah.
Evil I am compared to you. How weak I am compared to you. How you're going to beat me because I am so inferior to you.
Who's going to win the battle? Who do you think will win?
No!
Pride comes before the fall.
All of my hard work, and now I'm back on his level.
His opponent taunts him and plays maliciously with his rapier. In all the taunting, Josiah begins to look for an opportunity to strike while his opponent is busy, and he finds that opportunity and strikes. But his opponent is strong and grabs his rapier, pulling him down in an attempt to trap him by rendering his rapier useless to him. Josiah uses the same tactic back, trapping his opponent's rapier and pulling his free. And he chops off his opponent's head, ending the battle victorious. There is so many analogies of our battle with the enemy in these fencing bouts. I've only given some. There are many more, especially in that last bout as the taunting begins and the trapping of the rapier. Maybe you can share some of the analogies and scriptures that came to mind as you watched our fencing fight. But the Lord is faithful, and He will strengthen you and protect you from the evil one. 2 Thessalonians 3:3.